This is Mark Halpert from 3D Learner.
And I'm Mira, helper from 3D Learner. Welcome tonight, Tuesday, April 24th. If you're seeing us live, if you're seeing us on recording, it is still Tuesday night, the 24th. But we're here to talk about how we can help improve reading fluency, comprehension, executive functions, and build confidence for your bright right brain kinesthetic learner over the summer to be able to have them be ready and in a better place come the following school year.
Now, a lot of parents have called us over the last month, and they're saying, I think because of the way public schools are working or the way private schools are working, we're going to change the situation with our child. We want to avoid public schools because it's test centric and because things are kind of crazy there. And maybe the private school because it's a safer environment, or homeschool because it's just gets out of the craziness. And those are both viable options for people. What's important to understand about these options is they don't actually lead to increased reading fluency, reading comprehension, executive function skills where attention, working memory, or processing speed, or visual processing. That is, they don't address the core academic issues. They still can be good options, but it's just important to recognize what they don't do. Okay. Now, why to improve reading fluency, reading comprehension, and executive function skills? Mary, you want to discuss reading fluency?
Well, reading fluency is how fluently someone actually really reads, right? It is if they are reading a word not just sound by sound or letter by letter, but they're actually able to read words in a fluid motion, but in a fluid way, and also with a certain amount of prosody, which is expression, in order for them to be able to understand what they're reading. I have to tell you, and Mark will tell you this has been my sort of pet peeve. We need to be able to make reading engaging and fun for kids. And so fluency is certainly one of the things, and all of these things we're talking about is the mechanics of reading, but we also really want to be able, I'm going to say, as a kinesthetic learner myself, we need to be able to start with a bigger picture of helping kids enjoy reading, be engaged in reading, and then work on the individual skills. Sorry, I guess the individual skills of fluency, because there isn't anything worse than having someone read something word for word. So reading fluency is really important. It leads to comprehension, which obviously why read, right? If we're gonna do code well and we can do it fluently, if we don't understand what we're reading, then what's the point? And for all of our right brain kinesthetic learners, it's really important for them that for this comprehension piece to be able to make a movie in their head. And that's what's so exciting when kids get that switch and they know how to comprehend and they know what things mean and they can create the pictures of their characters and their settings in their own head.
And what's really important to us is to ignite that love for learning and reading so
Right.
that they not only are good at it, but they like it. And
Right.
then attention, working memory, and processing speed are important in virtually every subject. And they're kind of assumed that we have good working memory, good
Mhm.
processing speed, and good attention, but so many of our kids don't. And it's really important to identify and address those issues if the goal is to help your child to be all they can be.
And to go back to Mark's point about parents being frustrated about schools, these skills specifically are what no school, private school, public school, charter school, and actually even homeschool, because we're so set on curriculum. But we need to be able to make sure that these issues are addressed. In fact, addressed as a basic before we even start doing these other things.
And one of the giant questions that as a parent, you want to ask is your child right brain kinesthetic learner? Are they kind of, does your kid remember places visited even from years ago? Do they learn best when they see and experience information? Do they struggle in some subjects and can do far better in others? They often do far better in science and art.
All the
And,
subjects that so many people think, oh, are just sort of fluff or that they don't think much about. But honestly, these are where these kids shine. This is the reason they get up in the morning to be able to go to school or do things And it's really important to be able to get at those skills and those likes, as you will, and work through those to be able to help where kids struggle.
And one of the other questions we often ask parents is your child a lot smarter than the present level of reading comprehension would indicate? Because right brain learners, they might be really good at putting a Lego set together or remembering a lot of places they've been, but it might be quite intelligent. We've had kids 110, 125, 140 IQs, but their reading comprehension is years below that because of reasons we'll get into later. Yeah.
Right.
And one of the questions we often get asked are is it really possible over a summer to make significant gains? Or do I even have to worry about reading over the summer because everybody's behind? Well, here's the challenge. If you do very little reading over the summer, your child's going to fall further behind. And we've got a lot of kids who are 2, 3 years behind. So they might be 2.25 years, 2.5 years. That puts your kids in a terrible place to be. And then you can read some and keep that 2 year gap. Not a great goal, but at least it's better than not reading. And then you can do a traditional reading program where your kid might make 6 months or a year. At 3D Learner, our goal is really to help kids, especially in third grade and above, to make 2, and sometimes the older kids 3 and even 4 years reading gain in 4 to 6 months, okay, while they're making significant improvements in their reading fluency, their executive function skills, and their visual processing. And you wind up with a much more successful, confident, and resilient kid. And the slide on the right is a couple of examples of parents who came to us. First one was a third grader. He was reading at the 1.8 grade level. And the private school had suggested he go find another place. And over the next year, he was able to make 3 year gains in its reading comprehension because we addressed the whole kid. Okay? And his teacher said he made more progress than any kid she'd had in 27 years of teaching. The next kid's a fifth grader who was a couple of years behind and was able to make 4 year gains. Okay. And the same thing with a seventh grader who's able to make 4 year gains. This is possible, not probable, because it really takes teamwork to make this all happen. But it is possible to make 2, 3, or 4 year gains for many kids. We want to be very clear on this. It's not every child. If you have a child with a lower IQ, may have to adjust a little bit. But we've had kids like that make a couple year gains. So it's possible to make significant gains over the summer.
So we need to be able to really understand what we're talking about for reading. Is it reading versus reading, the decoding and fluency versus comprehension? And reading problems with decoding and phonemic awareness and reading fluency and does impact about 5 to 20% of the population. And if you're not so great at it, it can actually certainly impact you. But the point really is that its comprehension is really obviously is the bigger goal about being able to understand where and what kids read. We use audiobooks to be able to assist. We use we use text, closed caption on movies. That certainly helps to be able to match the print to the speech, because it's really important that if kids are only working on the fluency decoding piece and they never really get to comprehension, and we talk about that as actually language comprehension, we're finding that has been that's probably where the biggest gap lies of what's been happening for these kids for these last couple of years. And we get parents say, but Mira, my kids are really great talkers. And I'm like, well, talking and verbalizing is wonderful, but part of the challenge is when we're reading, we're using our eyes and our brain to be able to make those words come alive. And that's really about visualizing what words mean. Guys, have you had this situation where your kids have not been able to follow directions because they aren't actually really understanding the language of directions or understanding the language of what we're talking about? We were just talking with a young lady last week, and she was like, I don't think I've ever seen popcorn popped. that she knew what skinny popcorn was and how to be able to buy it. Now that we have so much popcorn available to us in stores with so many more flavors that, of course, I never had when we were growing up, the truth is she didn't really know how it worked. So think about the language just there. So you can do lots of activities. Just make sure your kids observe and that you're using words and language with that, because this is where our kids have truly been falling behind, 2, 3 years below grade level, and some even further, because they just don't. We make lots of assumptions. And let's remember, classroom teachers are teaching what they did 4 years ago for that third, fourth, fifth grade and beyond. And our kids had a gap, and there is just no getting that back unless you actually really teach to it.
Now, why your right brain kinesthetic learner may be struggling. One, they have difficulty understanding the high frequency words, words like and, what, but, the, except, that don't generate a picture.
No, no parents have been reading those words on flashcards. Just because you can read it doesn't mean that you understand it. Big difference.
They also have difficulty recognizing words they've seen but not mastered.
How many times have you actually talked about a word or had a word on a page, and then you have the very same word the next page, and you're exasperated because you said, you just saw this. That's a key indicator. It's a problem.
Another problem they have is they skip words and lines when reading.
All right. They jump all over the place. That's hard to understand, right?
And very often, and we have a handout which we can provide, which asks 15 questions on the visual processing side. It's probably one of the single most common problems we see with right brain learners, where they have good peripheral vision, but they have trouble focusing on the written word.
And then they process information slowly. Now, I have a difficult time with that, because for us visual right brain kinesthetic learners, it sort of comes out on the test that we process information slowly, because I didn't come back with you at that very fast answer. But there is, it's much more difficult to be able to try and figure out exactly what is it that I'm processing. And I may be processing way more information than I really need to, but I'm thinking that words or question that you asked me or that you ask our kids triggered something that they knew something else about. So that processing information, but yes, according to an assessment, slow processing can be a very big gap between that, how they measure processing speed, and what is actually really happening in terms of what potential
And
may
for those
be.
of you who are old enough to remember the days we had 56K modems,
It's a good
I
example.
process things relatively quickly, kind of like a Word document on a computer. Neuric processes information visually, kind of like a video where you download, might run out of time. They're processing information at a rapid rate. They're just not getting to the end point nearly as quickly.
Right.
They also have difficulty paying attention to that which is boring. And this has caused a great deal of debate between parents, where somebody said, but he can pay attention to Legos or to his video game for hours. That's actually the classic sign of a kid with an attention problem, is they can pay attention to that which is interesting, but have great difficulty paying attention to that which is boring or frustrating.
Right.
And then they have trouble remembering what they heard or read. When you tell them, do 3 things, and they remember just one. Okay. But they can
that
remember,
if you're lucky, unless you had something else that's a little more engaging on their way to do the very first thing. So yes, remember, things are visual.
Okay. Then they have the problems with the phonics, phonemic awareness, and reading fluency. And the other problem why they tend to struggle is we tend to focus on a kid's weakness. We call this the medical model. If a kid has a problem with decoding, we're going to bang them on decoding. We have problems on working memory, we're going to bang on that. But he or she never has people capitalizing on their strengths. And that gets really frustrating, because if you only work on weaknesses, you have you're better at your weaknesses, but you're never feeling as good as you can be if you're also capitalizing on strengths.
Well, and it's definitely not very fun because you don't get to do things that you like to do or that you're good at. So you're always sort of, oh, and kids don't really see that growth. So that's a problem.
And then interventions are often what we call splinter skills, which means they're not integrated, they're not putting the whole kid together, and they're not engaging. We've had teachers who told us they quit jobs working at certain places because all they were doing is repeating a certain curriculum. Okay. And what they wanted to do was something that was engaging for the kids.
Right.
And we've had kids parents have spent over $30,000 in programs. The program said they were effective, but their reading comprehension was unchanged. So in effect, parents weren't getting what they wanted. So what you want is a program that's integrated, engaging, and effective.
Right. And that the kid buys into more than anything. Right.
Right. And then a lot of people don't recognize these kids are really goal oriented. They want to win. So when you set a goal and you post the results, one mom said to me, I started posting the results on how many chapters my kid read. All of a sudden, he started reading more chapters. Yep. That's who these kids are. They want to set a goal, they want to achieve it. Okay. And then one of the reasons they struggle is they don't read. Poor readers, we have two kids who read a lot, two kids who didn't. And it wasn't until Mira put together the 3D learner program that our other two kids took off. But when you're struggling with reading, you tend
Why would
not
you want
to
to do
read.
it? Why would you want to do it if it's not satisfying? So the truth is that this is why we showed you that positive spiral versus a negative spiral. So when they don't do it, they don't get very it, and it's just not part of our vernacular about it's all in the way we present it, and you're trying to be able to have success breed success so that they
And
want to do more.
And we also, so one mom said to us, you help me, you coach me, and I said yes. Just why doesn't every program coach the parents on how to be the coach and advocate their kid needs? We can't answer that, but we'll just give you one simple example here. When you say to a child, if you finish this, we can go do that, they don't really see that as getting done. But when you shift the word to when you do this, this will happen, all of a sudden they can actually see the result happening. So those small changes in words can make big difference in how effective communication
I think I'm
is.
going to start wearing a banner that says language on the top of my forehead because
Language matters.
it does.
Okay. And how do you help these kids?
Well, we've come up with 7 keys to helping this right brain kinesthetic learner succeed. First of all, we need to recognize that they learn best with hands-on activities. You can't just tell a child what to be able to do. You need to be able to model things with them. They learn best when they get that aha moment. That's what it's like. And it's so fun to see these kids get turned on with that. Well, all right, flashcards are not exactly one of those things that work. Remember, they may help you. Maybe that's what helped. But for these kids, they need to be able to have manipulatives, have things that they work with, whether it's letters, whether it's numbers, whether it's things that they make to create words, to create meaning. They often have difficulty remembering and manipulating information that they've read about or heard when they experience it. Wow. So we all have a much better opportunity than any of us did when we were kids because now we've got 3D pictures or we've got Google the movies to be able to have kids. And honestly, that visual experience is just as positive as if they're going there. It might not be as fun that you're gone to Italy and that you're going to Italy on virtual tour, but you get the idea. You want to talk about peripheral vision, Mark?
They're very good. Right brain learn. Almost all kids with reading problems, like 80 or 90%, are right brain learners, and right brain learners tend to see the world out here, so they can often see a soccer field or a baseball field or see things going by, a bird going by or something else happening, because their visual field is wide. But when you watch how their eyes focus in on the written word, we use something called a visograph, which often shows them going back and forth, and one eye going one way and one eye going the other, which is the medical term for it is convergence and sufficiency. And as I said before, it's one of
eye
the
teaming.
it's eye teaming. It's one of the single most common problems our kids have. It's relatively easy to address, to identify and address, but it's rarely done. Schools almost always miss it. Okay. And too often people say, well, vision therapy is expensive. We try to weave it into an integrated program. Okay.
Why do I have to learn algebra? Why do I have to learn this? These kids thrive. We need to be able to make it relevant for them. We don't need to go into really long explanations as to why. We just have to show them why it's relevant and what it is. I remember we were just in someplace a couple of days ago, and a mom was talking to a kid I heard in the grocery store, and she said, "Oh, see, that's math. That's what you're using." The kid was kind of stunned. They're very goal oriented and they want to win. And a win is when they see progress. And as Mark talked a couple minutes ago about being able to record progress, they need to be able to see it. Because a lot of times they don't really recognize that they're a little better today than they were yesterday and a lot better than they were a couple of days ago. But, they still see that high hill ahead. But if we show progress, it's amazing how much and a big goal, and then break it down for them so that we can have manageable goals that they reach and get something for. They also really need to know what to expect and to be involved within the process and within the scheduling process. A lot of times we will tell parents when they'll say, "Oh, well, Johnny's going to be here for 3 hours." And we're like, let's make sure your child knows what that is and knows what that means. And also sometimes we don't really go, time and space for them is something that they don't really have a concept of. And if we get them engaged, I can't tell you how many kids are like, "Wait, that was really fast," because we have them engaged. So they need to be part of the process.
One of the first keys to outrageous success is rejecting the status quo. It's critical. If you say, my kid's way behind, but, so are a lot of other kids, that's one possible pathway, but it's not going to get you to success, no less outrageous success. So to some extent, you got to reject the status quo. And even if your school says, look, they'll be okay next year, we'll promote them. That's not success. We've been there. Okay, you got to find the right partner who has a track record of significant gains with kids like your child.
Right.
Exactly. And then you got to look at an assessment. Do they really assess? Look at a comprehensive assessment that looks at how your child learns best, where they're strong, where they're weak. Do they have a visual processing issue? Do they have a working memory, processing speed, attention issue? Okay. And do they really have an integrated, engaging, effective program? Okay. And one of the other keys to success, because this is a team effort, it's doing the follow through, both on the partner's partner and yours, because the parents that do the follow through see even greater benefits. And when you work with us, here's kind of a way our process works. It's really starts with initial conversation. We've had parents say to me, after 5 minutes in the conversation, "You know my child better than somebody who's been teaching for 3 years." I said, "Well, that's because we've seen over 2,500 of these kids. And I'm never going to say I know a kid just like yours, but we've seen a lot of kids." Okay. And then do they assess for success, or do they assess for just splitter skills? Okay. And then, one of the things we said before was kids have a problem with word recognition and understanding those small words. And Mira's come up with a great patented approach using clay. You want to elaborate, Mira?
Well, word mastery really comes from a, a child both seeing the patterns, knowing what those symbols, which are letters, sounds, and what those letter patterns make. And when they're put in a particular order, they create a word. And a word is really a small picture or a picture for these kids. And it's really important to be able to strengthen a child's visualization skills as in terms of sequencing as well as in terms of comprehension. I've finishing my certification in in reading in the new UFly University of Florida language in program that's
It's
based on an Orton Gillingham program, and it's proving to be an outstanding intervention as well as remediation for kids who are struggling readers, both for beginning readers as well as for kids that are struggling readers.
And when you do a program like ours, the kid doesn't have dyslexia to benefit from this. There are kids with gaps that need to be addressed. And in our system, you're able to address them whether or not a child has dyslexia or not.
Right. But we are also able to identify, in fact, with dyslexia, with the kinds of assessments that we're able to do now. And I know that there's a whole lot of controversy about the fact that kids are just not totally identified as having dyslexia because they put them under a specialized learning
Specific
program.
learning disability.
Thanks, that's the wording. But we are actually able to identify, and we can show you. And that's what's really exciting for me as a parent. When my kids would go off to be assessed, I'm like, oh, they come back with this report and I really didn't understand what it meant. We're here to we're a partnership. So we need to be able to show you, and we need to be able to show the kids where they're really strong and where they need to be able to have some help and keep them engaged in activities and really using their hands and really using movement and really getting them going to be able to be excited about learning.
And it's important to identify and address the visual processing issues I discussed before. And one of the things is we see as a visograph, which looks like virtual reality glasses, and it tracks eye movement. And we even had an ophthalmologist who had been practicing for 50 years say, I've been fighting against this for 50 years, and now you showed me my grandson had the problem and you were able to address it. I guess I learned something here. You can teach an old man new tricks. And it's a good feeling when you actually can identify this problem. And too many programs don't actually try to identify it or address it. And we've done that for 25 years.
Right. We have a systematic approach to improve reading fluency, comprehension, and executive function skills. But it starts with setting goals and training with parents so that all of us, as I said, we're a team. We are part of the team, and depending on your educational situation, whether you are going to homeschool, private school, or send your kids to public charter schools, we help with that as well to be able to get the help and support all the way around so that we're all on the same page. So that collaboration is really key. And actually what we're talking about is helping the kids also learn how to be able to be collaborative, and more than anything, when it is that they understand and when it is that they don't understand and what kinds of words they can use. So the follow through, the commitment for goals, and the flexibility on how we get there is vital to be able to help your child be successful, whether it's with us or whether it's with anyone else. But we encourage you to call us, and we'll be glad to talk to you and talk you through whether you're in the South Florida area or whether you're anywhere around the world. Thanks to technology and thanks to the ability to be able to help kids honestly through this, we've had some amazing successes from first graders through college about being able to help them in this format. To be able, we have materials that we send you and send the kids, and honestly, it has been quite remarkable about how successful they have felt and the success that they've been.
And we've gotten a number of calls from people who've watched the previous videos and shared the information with a friend. And we're going to make this videos available on Facebook, on Twitter, I think, or LinkedIn.
Twitter and no, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. But Facebook's or YouTube's a great place to find.
And we welcome our viewers that are on Facebook with us tonight. So thanks. And if you have any questions, please let us know.
And we're also, feel free to share the information with a friend. And please, if we can help in any way, give us a call, 561-361-7495.
Have a really good evening and really enjoy these last couple of weeks of school. You'll get through this. Call us. We're here to help you. Good night.